Before we begin, let me ask you something. Have you ever received a gift that felt warm in your hands, but cold in your gut the moment you looked closer?
Wow, thank you.
Laura Mitchell believed that day would be simple. A small backyard in Columbus, Ohio, paper plates bending under slices of store-bought cake, a few folding chairs borrowed from neighbors. Nothing fancy, just a quiet celebration for her son Ethan, who had finished elementary school and was already standing on the edge of a louder, more complicated world. Laura liked things modest. After her divorce, modesty had become a form of control over money, over emotions, over the life she was rebuilding piece by piece. She worked as an internal accountant, paid bills early, kept a calendar on the fridge, and told herself that if she stayed organized, nothing could slip through the cracks. Ethan was laughing when his grandparents arrived. Charles and Evelyn Brooks stepped out of their polished SUV, dressed like they were attending a fundraiser, not a child's graduation party. They hugged Ethan tightly, a little too tightly, and handed him a large, neatly wrapped box. Expensive paper, perfect corners. "This one's special," Evelyn said, smiling at Laura in a way that never quite reached her eyes. Ethan tore the paper open and froze. Inside was a high-end modular building set, the kind Laura had once told him they'd save for later. He looked up, unsure whether to be excited or to ask
thank
permission.
You. This is amazing.
Laura nodded, forcing a smile. Gifts had always been Charles and Evelyn's language. Big ones, heavy ones. As the party drifted on, Ethan carried the box inside, already planning where to build it. It wasn't until evening, when the dishes were stacked and the backyard went quiet, that he called out softly from the living room, "Mom, this doesn't look like a toy part." Laura walked over, expecting a broken piece or missing screw. Instead,
Sweetheart, what's wrong?
she saw a small black square tucked beneath the plastic
tell me.
tray. Clean edges, no logo, no reason to be there. Her chest tightened, but her face didn't change. She kissed Ethan's hair, told him they'd look at it later, and sent him to brush his teeth.
I have to correct the phase inversion before the mixdown.
Only when the house was silent did she sit at the kitchen table and open the box again, under the yellow cone of a desk lamp. The device fit perfectly into her palm. A recorder and a tracker. Laura didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just sat there, listening to the hum of the refrigerator, realizing that someone who smiled across her table that afternoon had wanted to listen too. To her voice, to her silences, to her home. In that moment, she understood something that takes most people far too long to accept. The most dangerous threats don't knock on the door. They bring cake. They bring gifts. They tell you they're only worried. And this was never just about a toy. This was about control. If you've watched enough revenge stories, you know that the first move is rarely loud.
Happy birthday, dear.
It's quiet, polite,
Wow.
almost
thank
loving.
You. This is amazing.
And Laura hadn't even seen the board yet, only the first piece being placed. She slipped the device into a zip bag, turned off the kitchen light, and went to check on Ethan. He was already asleep, one arm curled around the unopened box, trusting without knowing why. Laura stood there longer than she meant to, her hand on the doorframe, realizing that whatever had just begun wasn't something she could walk away from. Not when it had already crossed into her child's room. Laura
Sweetheart,
didn't
what's
confront
wrong?
anyone the next morning. She packed Ethan's lunch the same way
tell
she
me.
always did, checked his homework, reminded him to bring his jacket even though the forecast said clear skies. From the outside, nothing had changed. Inside, every sound
The
felt
modulation
sharper,
frequency is
every
unstable.
pause
I
heavier.
have to correct the phase inversion
The small
before the
zip bag
mixdown.
with the device stayed hidden in the bottom drawer of her desk, beneath old tax folders and expired warranties. Laura told herself she needed proof before emotions. She had survived her divorce by learning one rule the hard way: never accuse without leverage. Over the next few days, patterns began to surface, things she might have brushed off before. Evelyn calling in the middle of work hours, her voice syrupy with concern. Charles asking casual questions about Ethan's schedule, his savings account, whether Laura was getting enough rest. Each conversation ended with the same soft phrase. "We're only thinking about what's best for him." Laura started replaying moments from the past year. The unsolicited recommendation for a child therapist. The way Evelyn once corrected Ethan when he said his mom handled the money. "For now,"
birthday,
she had added lightly, as if it were a joke.
Wow, thank you. This is amazing.
At night, Laura plugged the recorder into her laptop. There wasn't much yet. Ambient noise, the clink of dishes, her own voice humming while she cleaned. But knowing it was there made her stomach twist. Someone had intended to listen. Someone had wanted access without asking. When Laura finally met with a lawyer, she chose a quiet office downtown, the kind that didn't advertise on billboards. The attorney, a woman about her age with tired eyes and a steady voice, examined the device carefully.
Sweetheart, what's wrong?
"This wasn't an accident," she said,
You can tell me.
"and it wasn't cheap." Laura asked the question she'd been holding back. "Can they take my son?" The lawyer didn't answer right away. "Not easily. But
The
custody
modulation
isn't always the
frequency is
first move.
unstable. I
Financial
have to correct
guardianship
the
is
phase
cleaner,
inversion before the
less
mixdown.
emotional resistance." That word lingered. Cleaner. The lawyer explained how concerned relatives sometimes positioned themselves as safeguards, temporary oversight, shared responsibility. It often started with claims of stress, instability, or concern for a child's emotional environment. Laura felt the air thin around her. "Have they asked about this before?" The lawyer nodded. "Not formally, but yes, they've made inquiries." Driving home, Laura realized the gift hadn't been a mistake or a test. It had been confirmation. They were no longer guessing whether she could be monitored. They were preparing for what came next. At dinner that evening, Ethan mentioned that Grandma Evelyn wanted to take him out for ice cream on Saturday. "She said we might talk to someone
Happy
nice
birthday,
who helps
dear.
kids with worries."
Wow,
Laura kept her
thank
fork
you.
steady.
This is amazing.
Did she say why? Ethan shrugged. "She said you've been tired lately." The room went quiet. Not tense, just hollow. Later, after Ethan was asleep, Laura sat on the edge of her bed and finally let herself feel it. Not fear, but betrayal. The kind that seeps in slowly, disguised as help. She wasn't dealing with an enemy who wanted to destroy her outright. She was facing people who wanted to replace her while insisting
Sweetheart,
they
what's
loved her.
wrong?
In the dark, Laura made a decision
You can
that
tell
would
me.
shape everything that followed. She would stop reacting. She would start watching. Because if they were building a case against her, then she needed to understand every piece of it. And this time,
The
she wouldn't
modulation
underestimate
frequency
how
is
far
unstable.
family
I have
was
to
willing
correct
to
the
go.
phase inversion before the mixdown.
By the third week, Laura could feel the distance before she could explain it. Ethan still hugged her goodbye in the mornings, but his arms loosened first. He paused before answering questions, like he was checking his words against something invisible. When she reminded him about chores, he nodded quickly, eyes lowered, as if correction now came with a cost. At first, Laura told herself it was just age. 11 was awkward. 11 was quiet. But then the school email arrived, polite and carefully worded, asking if she had time to discuss some observations about Ethan's emotional state. She sat in the small office across from the counselor, listening to phrases that sounded harmless on their own. Adjustment, stress cues, environmental pressure. The counselor mentioned that Ethan had spoken about worry at
Happy
home,
birthday,
about
dear.
feeling responsible for things he didn't fully
Wow,
understand.
Thank you. This is amazing.
Laura asked the only question that mattered. Who spoke to him? The counselor hesitated. His grandparents mentioned they were supporting him through some conversations. They thought it would help. Help. Again. That afternoon, Laura found the consent form in Ethan's backpack. It wasn't signed by her. It didn't need to be, apparently. Ohio law allowed relatives to initiate preliminary consultations under certain circumstances. Temporary,
Sweetheart, what's wrong?
non-invasive. Words designed to sound
You can
small.
tell me.
That night, Laura finally listened closely to the recordings she'd been avoiding. Not because she wanted to hear herself, but because she needed to hear them. Her voice sounded
The
tired,
modulation
yes.
frequency is unstable.
Firm
I have
sometimes.
to correct the phase inversion
Normal.
before the mixdown.
What chilled her wasn't what she said, but what followed. A softer voice. Evelyn's. She worries because she loves you, but sometimes grown-ups don't know when they need help. Then a pause. A child's pause. Do you feel like you have to be the strong one at home? Laura closed the laptop slowly, her hands steady only because they had gone numb. The next move came quickly. Charles called, his tone calm, almost apologetic. He suggested a more structured evaluation for Ethan, someone with experience, someone they trusted. When Laura declined, he didn't argue. He simply said, "We were hoping you'd be open-minded." The words followed her into the next day, into the grocery store, into the quiet moments where doubt tries to root itself.
Happy birthday, dear.
Was she tired? Yes.
Wow, thank you.
Was she
This
stressed?
is amazing.
Of course. Was that enough to let others define her? Midweek, Ethan came home quieter than usual. When Laura reminded him about his math worksheet, he flinched. Not dramatically, just enough to notice. "Mom," he said carefully, "Grandma says you worry too much about money." Laura felt something tighten behind her ribs. "What did you say?" "That maybe it's not my job to notice." The sentence wasn't his.
Sweetheart,
Not
what's
really.
wrong?
If you've ever watched someone you love begin to
can tell
question
me.
you, not out of rebellion, but out of concern planted by others, you know how helpless that moment feels. By Friday, the power shift was clear. Evelyn no longer asked permission.
The modulation
She informed.
frequency is unstable.
Therapy appointments
I
were
have to correct
scheduled.
the phase inversion
Opinions
before
were
the
shared
mixdown.
with professionals. Laura was described gently as overwhelmed. She wasn't being attacked head-on. She was being framed. And the most dangerous part was this. Everyone involved could look her in the eye and say they were only trying to help Ethan. Meanwhile, Laura stood in her own kitchen, realizing that authority doesn't always arrive with raised voices or slammed doors. Sometimes, it arrives smiling, holding a clipboard, and speaking for your child before you're allowed to finish your sentence. The letter arrived on a Tuesday, thin and official, slipped between grocery coupons and school flyers, as if it didn't carry the weight to tilt Laura's entire life. She read it once standing at the counter, then again sitting down. It wasn't a custody filing, not yet. It was a notice of emergency review,
Happy
temporary,
birthday, dear.
procedural, almost polite in
Wow,
tone.
thank
Charles
you.
and Evelyn
This is
Brooks
amazing.
were requesting a short-term suspension of Laura's financial guardianship over Ethan's educational trust, citing credible concerns regarding emotional stability and decision-making capacity. Laura felt something hollow out in her chest. They hadn't come for her son. They'd come for her credibility. Within hours, the bank called. The woman on the line sounded apologetic, practiced. Until the review concluded, certain accounts would be inaccessible. Tuition-related
Sweetheart, what's
disbursements
wrong?
paused. Non-essential withdrawals restricted.
You can tell me.
Laura asked the question she already knew the answer to. For how long? Until the court clarifies, the woman said gently. Clarifies. As if Laura
The
herself
modulation
were the
frequency is
confusion.
unstable. I have to
That
correct the
evening,
phase inversion
Ethan
before
mentioned
the
his summer
mixdown.
program while pushing peas around his plate. Grandma said the payment didn't go through, he said. Not accusing, just stating a fact. Did something happen? Laura opened her mouth, then closed it. She chose the simplest truth. There's a delay. Ethan nodded, but the look on his face lingered. Not disappointment, uncertainty. The kind that quietly rewrites how a child sees the ground beneath them. 2 days later, Laura stood in a small courtroom that smelled faintly of old paper and disinfectant. The hearing was brief by design. No jury, no raised voices, just measured words and concerned expressions. The opposing attorney never called her unfit. He didn't have to. He spoke about stress indicators, about recorded statements that suggested chronic anxiety, about the importance of safeguarding a child's future assets when
Wow,
emotions
thank
might cloud
you.
judgment.
This is amazing.
When it was Laura's turn to speak, the judge stopped her gently. "This isn't a finding," he said. "It's a precaution." Precaution. Another word that sounded harmless until it wasn't. She was ordered to undergo a psychological evaluation. Mandatory. Neutral, they said. Routine. Laura walked out of the courthouse into bright afternoon sun, her hands shaking for the first time since this had begun.
Sweetheart,
She had
what's
been
wrong?
careful, responsible, quiet.
You can tell me.
And still, the system had leaned away from her without ever asking who had pushed first. At home, she opened her email to find messages from the school, the camp, even a politely worded inquiry from the therapist's office, asking how she was coping with the additional oversight. Oversight. As if motherhood were now a probation. That night, Laura sat alone at the kitchen table, long after Ethan had gone to bed. The recorder lay beside her, unopened. She didn't need to listen to know what it held. What broke her wasn't fear. It was the realization that her endurance had been mistaken for weakness. They had smiled, they had spoken softly, and step by step, they had moved the world just far enough that she was now standing at the edge of it, being asked to prove she deserved to remain. Laura pressed her palms flat against the table, steadying herself. This was the limit. Not because she was angry, but because she finally understood the rules of what she was up against. If she didn't reclaim her voice now, someone else would keep using it against her.
Happy birthday, dear.
Laura didn't sleep that night, but not in the
Wow,
frantic
thank
way she
you.
had before.
This is amazing.
This time, her mind moved slowly, deliberately, like someone turning over pieces on a table instead of running from them. By morning, she had made a decision. Not a dramatic one, a quiet, dangerous one. She called Rachel Myers at 8 sharp. Rachel was a family law attorney recommended months ago by a coworker, back when Laura had laughed and said she'd never need something like that. Rachel listened without interrupting, only asking Laura to pause once, gently,
Sweetheart, what's
when her
wrong?
voice started to tighten. When Laura
You can tell
finished,
me.
there was a brief silence on the line. "They're not testing you," Rachel said finally. "They're building a record. And the good news is, records work both ways." That afternoon,
modulation
Laura
frequency
sat in
is
a neutral
unstable.
office with
I have to
beige
correct the
walls and a
phase
ticking
inversion before
clock,
the mixdown.
answering questions from a court-appointed evaluator. She spoke carefully, but she didn't perform. She talked about exhaustion without apology, about fear without dramatizing it, about parenting alone without framing it as a failure. For the first time in weeks, she didn't feel like she was defending herself. She was simply stating facts. When she got home, she opened the locked drawer. The recorder felt heavier than before. She played it once, all the way through. Then again, this time with a notebook beside her. She wrote down timestamps, phrases, patterns. The way Evelyn's voice softened when guiding Ethan's words. The way Charles corrected him when he hesitated. This wasn't concern. It was rehearsal. Laura forwarded the audio to Rachel with a short message. "I think this matters,"
birthday,
Rachel
dear.
replied within minutes. It matters
Wow,
a lot.
thank you.
Do
This is
not tell them you
amazing.
have this. Over the next week, Laura became methodical. She gathered emails she'd ignored for years, texts that once felt intrusive but harmless, notes scribbled after phone calls where Charles had asked again about balances and distributions, always framed as curiosity, always followed by advice. When Rachel laid everything out in chronological order, the story changed shape. What had felt like scattered pressure became a clear arc.
Sweetheart,
First,
what's wrong?
doubt. Then monitoring.
can
Then
tell me.
intervention. Finally, leverage. Meanwhile, the system kept moving. Laura received notice that the temporary financial review would escalate to a formal hearing.
The modulation
The word
frequency is
formal
unstable.
should have terrified
I have
her.
to correct the phase inversion
Instead,
before the
it
mixing.
sharpened her focus. Formal meant evidence. It meant standards. At school pickup, Ethan asked why Grandma hadn't called lately. Laura knelt in front of him, meeting his eyes. "Sometimes adults make mistakes," she said. "And when that happens, they need space to fix them." He accepted that, the way children often do when the truth is steady. 2 days later, Rachel called with an edge of satisfaction she hadn't shown before. "We filed our response," she said, "and a motion." "For what?" Laura asked. "Discovery," Rachel said. "If they're claiming concern, they're going to have to explain their methods, under oath." Laura sat down slowly. That night, for the first time since the letter arrived, she slept for 4 uninterrupted hours. The system hadn't corrected itself yet,
Happy birthday,
but
dear.
it had noticed the shift.
Wow.
The
thank
silence
you.
from
This
Charles
is
and
amazing.
Evelyn wasn't calm anymore. It was strategic. And Laura finally understood something that would carry her through what came next. She wasn't trying to win an argument. She was restoring the truth to the record, one piece at a time. The hearing took place on a grey morning, the kind that softened sound and made everything feel slower than it was. Laura arrived early, not out of nerves, but habit now. Preparation had replaced fear.
Sweetheart, what's wrong?
She sat beside Rachel at the long table, hands
tell me.
folded, breathing steady. Across the room, Charles and Evelyn Brooks looked smaller than Laura remembered. Not weaker, just ordinary. Their attorney whispered
The
to them in
modulation
short bursts,
frequency is unstable.
papers
I
sliding
have
back
to
and
correct
forth
the
like
phase
shields.
inversion
The
before
judge
mixing.
moved efficiently. No speeches, no indulgence. This was not a stage. Rachel spoke first, calm and precise. She didn't dramatize the audio. She contextualized it. Dates, patterns, intent. She explained how the trust fund inquiry had escalated into surveillance, how concern had quietly turned into control. When the recording played, no one in the room reacted outwardly. That was the most damning part. The words didn't need emphasis. They simply existed. Laura watched the judge's pen pause. Charles's attorney tried to reframe it as misunderstanding, grandparents overstepping, emotions running high. But the explanation bent under its own weight. Why the secrecy? Why the rehearsed language? Why the financial timing? When Evelyn was questioned directly, her
Happy
voice
birthday,
trembled,
dear.
not with remorse, but with
Wow,
surprise.
Thank you. This is amazing.
She hadn't expected to be seen this clearly. Laura was asked only a few questions. She answered them simply. She didn't list sacrifices. She didn't recount sleepless nights. She spoke about consistency, about Ethan's routine, about trust as something fragile, especially in children. When it was over, the judge leaned back slightly and spoke without drama. The temporary suspension was lifted immediately. Laura's authority as trustee
Sweetheart, what's
was
wrong?
reaffirmed in full. The request for
can tell me.
oversight was denied, and due to the nature of the evidence, all future contact would be limited and supervised, contingent on compliance with court-approved boundaries. No apology was requested,
The modulation
None was offered.
frequency is unstable.
The
I
gavel
have to
came
correct
down
the phase
softly.
inversion before the
Court
mixdown.
adjourned. Outside, the air felt different. Not lighter, clearer. Laura didn't look back as she walked down the steps. Rachel squeezed her shoulder once, then let go. There was nothing more to say. At home, Laura unlocked the drawer and removed the recorder. She didn't destroy it. She didn't hide it away either. She placed it in a labeled envelope and slid it into a file cabinet where it would remain untouched unless needed again. Evidence doesn't ask for revenge. It only waits. That evening, Ethan helped her cook dinner. He told her about a science project, about a kid at school who'd made him laugh. Normal things. Precious things. Afterward, they sat on the couch. The quiet kind that feels earned. Ethan leaned against her without thinking about it. "Everything okay now?" he asked.
Wow.
Laura thought
thank
for a
you.
moment.
This is amazing.
"Yes," she said. And this time, she meant it without reservation. Weeks passed. Life resumed its shape. The trust fund continued as it always had. School forms were signed without question. Phone calls went unanswered and eventually stopped coming. No confrontation, no victory speech. Just space where tension used to live. Sometimes, late at night, Laura reflected on how close she'd come to losing ground simply by
Sweetheart, what's
staying
wrong?
silent too long. And she understood
can tell
something
me.
she wished she'd known earlier. Dignity isn't reclaimed through noise. It returns when truth is held steady long enough that it can no longer be ignored. And in that
The
quiet
modulation
justice,
frequency is
both she
unstable.
and her
I
son
have to correct the phase
finally
inversion
found
before the
room to
mixdown.
breathe again.